Hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one, This is Sunday Dailies. I'm back with another one. Sunday Dailies. Should I say Sunday Daily 16? Yeah, Sunday Daily 16, I believe. Yeah. Sunday Daily 16. Good old sweet 16. I know a lot of people was hating. Appreciate the love though from the last, stream and recording. I've been out of here and been busy and things like that nature, and everybody's talking about this. We're gonna talk about the Britney Spears and the Wembenyama. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about that. Why I think about Wembenyama, is he gonna be a great player? He will be. It's just give him some years, man. We haven't seen him in one game. The summer league don't count, but if you see him develop, he's. I hear people trying to compare him to Bill Russell, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that comparison. And shouts out to Two Raw for TV and the LDBC, explaining the Lions Den basketball community. They on YouTube, and them guys always bring out good information. And I always liked it them, the LDBC. But it's like basically they're talking about him because he's the hype around since LeBron. LeBron's about to be out, and they're pushing Wim as the guy. And I see this all the time, and you see how that went. A lot of first overall picks don't usually be that good. The best ones we've seen was, yeah, Shaq got 4 rings. Yeah, he got 4 championships. LeBron's got 4, and Elijah one's got 2. There's a few good exceptions. David Robinson's got 2. He was the first overall pick, by the way. But the best player of all time, usually the third picks don't usually be good, but one of them has championships. That's Michael Jordan. He has 6. Everybody else's third pick, they probably had championships or 2, but they wasn't really that good if you really think about it. It's kind of very interesting where the world is right now. Now I know everybody's talking about the Kiki Palmer drama with old boy. To me, shouts out to Sarge breaking it down, and he was talking about Captain Soul. I was watching his recording. It just goes to show you that she's been gone. She's a child star that failed a long time ago. She was a good child star for a minute, and she was in those movies with Tyler Perry and stuff like that. Kiki Palmer. That's how she got her name to fame. But after that, she fell off, man. Like ain't nobody into her weak ass, man. She's a desperate hoe. Let's just keep it like that. We're gonna slide off that. I don't even want to talk about that garbage. I mean, that's irrelevant topics. And then you got people talking about what you see now. Let's see what they talking about. So basically, in YouTube, people doing their things, and let's just talk about it. But they ain't really talking about nothing. Now the battle rap scene is the same. Um, it's still the same. A lot of people just gonna be who they are, and they just gonna be who it is. You know what I'm saying? But I understand people don't really care what I have to say or anyway. But a lot of things is, if you see what's going on, things are changing. But speaking of people talking about open panels, I'll do a vlog stream on that. Why I say open panels are always going to suck every now and then. I might do that. I might. I might piss y'all off this week if I get some time to myself. I might do a vlog stream just to anger y'all niggas, man, because I know July is gonna be dry. I'm just gonna piss y'all niggas off for one, just a one bit. I have to this month because I got to be innovative. But anyways, yeah. But a lot of times you see these stories come up, and then they said Skip was gonna be forced to retire. I heard this from Ticket TV. I ain't subscribed to the motherfucker, but he made some compelling arguments. Like early this morning, I was watching that he said Skip can't find a part. They may force him to retire. There's some truth. A lot of NFL has a union. They don't like what he said about Damar Hamlin. Those comments. But that Enos Cantor and that one, the lesbian, what's her name, Natasha Cloud. I was gonna call it the other word, the D word, rhymes with bike, but dyke, by the way, but I just said it. But my apologies. But hey, it is what it is. But it's just like it just goes to show you what Enos can to me is a clown. How can you go against a country that's allied with America, but unless you're getting something out of it? He trying to be in that Republican Party in America. See, these heathens, right? Always trying to trash our people, right? Even though we don't care for Klaus, she's into idolatry. She's in that same sexual shit. She's being misled, and that's understandable because the WNBA is about to be finished. They about to be finito. So any other time, why Enos Cantor is trying to scoop her is well, they got these regimes. It's crazy. I can give you a plane ticket. Trying to simp for her and trying to say, don't, dude. Did you know she doesn't like men? Trying to simp for her, trying to say, uh, dude, fly her out to where you can't even go nowhere. You being ousted by your own country. Talk about them regimes. Like, get out of here. We know those regimes are controlled by Esau, but we ain't gonna get into that because Esau controls those regimes. Basically, y'all know what I believe in my scriptures and things that y'all bless of the culture, and that's what we talk about, and that's what I talk about over here. And normally, Enos Cantor should know that a lot of times people just get caught up on the goofy shit, right? So technically, when you got people talking like this, you expect people to just say, "What are you saying right now?" You know what I'm saying? But why? It's because he's desperate to get some kind. He tried to get back in the NBA, and they don't want him. He don't play defense. He's a scoring big. That's all he is. He's a scoring big. He's decent. He's mediocre, but he's like a role player, and he ain't been in the league for the past couple of years since that political shit. So Enes Cantor went downhill. They picking his ass up. He was he was relevant the 2017 era, the 2017 year. He was relevant in 2018. I think the pandemic he was, and then he had that little incident. And after the 2020s, they shipped him off the map. When he was in the league, yeah, he was playing with Westbrook and everybody. So ain't nobody studying Enes Cantor. But I just had to throw that out there because I posted that on my community tab and what I thought about. And shouts out to the sports and politics. He's got a good channel, LB. He breaks it down. He shouted me out in the chat room. Salute to him. He's got a good channel. Y'all subscribe to him. And he talked about this the situation with Brittany and Victor Wembanyama and the things like that. The number one draft pick. I haven't watched the summer league. I saw the highlights and it looks pretty good. It's still early. The regular season, but that play-in tournament is bullshit, by the way. Or what they call it, the mid tournament. That's garbage. That's not helping the NBA. It's making y'all look stupid. But that's the NBA. That's what they do anyway. The league's collapsing. You got Disney collapsing with the ESPN fines, like I said this past last Thursday. It's gonna be more layoffs. It's over for ESPN, and they try to say Pat McAfee is supposed to take Storm. I hear people keep saying his name. He's more funny. That's true, but he ain't that good. He's just a YouTuber that knows sports, but that doesn't mean he has a knowledge of sports. I played sports. The only sport I played is probably basketball for the school and I actually play pickup ball and things like that. I understand the game more than most people. And I used to play in the day. I used to. I was decent. I was a defensive player. Even though I had a mid range and things like that, I shot 80% in the practice line that 1 year as a freshman. I still hold that. I'm very decent, but I was a damn good defender. And stay in front of my man, maintain the ball, got stops. I played decent. I wasn't an average player, but I was above average into an average player. I was an average player in the beginning of the freshman year, then I became above average player on defense. I was good on defense. I may not have been a terrific scorer, but I improved that after I left the freshman team, but didn't make my varsity 3 times. I tried, and the school that I was with was trash. They was getting killed by better players that was in the fucking high schools. I was good, overlooked, hated on like always, but I was decent on defense. I was good. I always had post move and post games. I wasn't a guard, I can do those, but my size alone, I didn't have that, you know, massive physique. That's what stopped me. I would like I said, I was mostly basically was happy I played the college level. I would love to play the college level. That's I would have done 4 years and play college. That would have been me. But on the pro level, it'd been nice, you know. But you know what I'm saying? I had dreams to play college basketball. That was my dream because years ago I was investing in that, and then I had to take a slight detour of that career and just put it to bed. Yeah, I play pickup basketball every now and then, have fun, but I haven't played ball in years, so I'm out of shape. I need to get back into it, and I haven't played ball in a minute. So it's like it's been years. Still got defense, still got the footwork. I just need to get the body in shape. Once I get my body back, I'll get back out there and shoot. But you know, but the whole purpose of it, playing ball is good. I used to play ball in the day. I still got some of the moves. It's just I done got lazy. I'm focused on the physical fitness part of my body and just enhancing it. You know, I still got the jump shot. It's been a minute since I touched the rock. I haven't played basketball in years. It's kind of like when you try to skateboard again and you try to get back up in the game, and them days is over. Them days is what it used to be is over. But then again, I played the sport. I touched the rock. I know what it's like. So y'all can't tell me about that. But I understand these NBA players and I understand how they play and how it translate into they making dollars. Everybody's making millions of dollars. Really great salary. Salary don't mean nothing. Is that their real money? That's their play money they can have in the future. That's their investment. But in reality, they already get endorsement deals outside. Their real money in the bank. They're more richer than the average player. See, LeBron's got billions. He don't care about that NBA contract. Did you know that Kevin Durant don't care about it? Yeah, he's a multi-millionaire. All these players are multi-millionaires. It ain't what they used to be. The league's changed. Adam Silver done changed to the depth that you can't even hardly recognize. David Stern had the league then he changed it in '04. I blame him for most of the changes too. It was him, Silver, and that's why the league is so damn soft. And this is why people don't fuck with a lot of players, especially the sexual sycophants, the LeBron sexual fans. A lot of people call them Dick licks, but you know, but we ain't gonna get into that. I just said it, but we ain't gonna get into that. That's what they are. We don't care about them. But in reality, we see they still talk about that stupid greatest of all time debate with him and Michael Jordan. And to me, it's one sided. I have to go with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the greatest player to ever, statistically, in modern era basketball, the most talked about since during the days when the NBA began. Let me tell you something. Once upon a time, the 40s, they had what? Joe Folks. 50s, they had, I would say, Joe Folks in the 40s. And yes, it was Mike and Dolph Shades in the 50s. It was Mike and Dolph Shades. Bob Pettit was the leading scorer. And then you had Bill Russell. Now, Bill Russell won 2 championships in Boston. He won in the first year, and then he won one against the Lakers. He swept. That was his 3rd year, by the way. That was in '59. And Bob Pettit won 1 championship in '58, and Dolph Shades won one with the currently known as the Sixers now, but they was known as the Syracuse Nationals in 1955. How I know that? I used to read a lot of basketball, see a lot of highlights from NBA TV. I used to go home with library books at the age of 10. This is back in '98, and when I was young back then, I was into Jordan and basketball. I told y'all this whole story before. That's when I got into it, but prior that was I was brainwashed into that belief he was this and that he was everything. But then when I studied actual game at 10 years old and actually got into it and actually playing the sport and playing for a league when I was younger, I studied the game properly from way back from the 40s and way on how basketball was meant by Naismith. I know about all that. I used to take home and library books and study the game, what it technique and plays and defense and stances and all that. I was into that. Know all my legends from the past. I respect the legends, what they paved the way of the game. Even Will Chamberlain in the '60s. We won't get to that. So the '50s, like I said, I named them. Now the '40s, I said 2 players you can name out of that. It was Joe Folks from the Warriors, Mikan with the Lakers. I know he played for the Gears, but he also played for the Lakers because he's well known for the Lakers with that championship. Then it was Mikan again, Bob Pettit. It was Mikan again, Bob Pettit, Dolph Shades, Bill Russell, Paul Arizin, that's your top 5 players in the 50s. Those are the players we talked about. Like I said, you got Mikan, Pettit, Russell, that's 3. Number 4, Arizin and Shays. Dolph Shays, those are your top 5 players in the 50s. Now in the 60s, you had a little bit of everybody. You had you had Elgin Baylor. He's top 10 in the 50s and later on with the Lakers. He came later. But it was those guys I just mentioned. But those were the guys was going to expect it to be. But Russell was new in the league. But at the time, he was going to be great. He was a great college player, so they projected him to be great. So in the 60s, you already know it's Wilt, Russell, Wilt, uh, Pettit, a little bit of Pettit. He was on the decline, by the way. It was Pettit. It was Dolph Shays went out his way. You don't see him no more. Then you had Paul Arizin. Then you had Jerry West. You had who else? Jerry West, Rick Barry. Jerry West, Rick Barry. There's a couple other players in the 60s. Of course, you have Hal Gray. You got a lot of great players in the 60s. Walt Bellamy. You had it's a lot of great players in the 60s. I can name rattle off. And the ones I just mentioned. And who else? You had Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson. And he played with the Royals, Cincinnati. Who else was great? Now I forgot about Frank Sal in 1951 with the Rochester Royals. They won that championship in 51. He was recognizable. He may not have been a star, but he at that time he was considered top 10 in that era. But in today's NBA, he's probably lower on the totem pole. And they don't know who that is. Who's Frank Sal? He won a championship in 1951 with the Rochester Royals, currently known as the Sacramento Kings. One of my favorite teams in the Western Conference in history since the 80s. And I've been watching the Sacramento Kings in the 90s. I was a kid in the 90s, born in the late 80s, but I always like Mitch Richmond and them boys. Sacramento's always been one of my favorite Western teams. I always like their history too, because when they were the Royals, they did something. They could have won some championships with the Royals or Kansas City and all that as the Kings and all that, but I always like the Kings. I always liked them, the Spurs, and the Sonics. I have several teams in the West I like, but I am a Spurs guy, but I always like the Kings first before the Spurs. I always like to see them win. Kings is like my favorite team to watch, to be honest with you. I'm strictly with them. But I do like the Spurs as champions, as they are. They've proven time and time again they're a good team. But then you got teams that I've known and studied in the 60s. There was a lot of good teams too. They say it wasn't that many teams. Yes, they were. There was expansion teams going on. The league was getting bigger. This is where the money started changing. The 60s was booming. Politics was changing. The 70s, you had teams that split, but the ABA was another story. A lot of great ABA players. Of course, you had your Artist Gilmores, you had your Dr. J's, you had your who else you had? Was in ABA. You had David Thompson. You have all those guys. Of course, you have Wes Unseld in the 60s and 70s. He was new at the time. Won a championship in '78 with the Bullets, right? Oh, you got lots of Willis Reed. He was around the 60s, but he was with the Knicks. You had Chamberlain. Russell was gone after the 60s, the 70s, and who else? You had Rick Barry. Who else you had? Dave Cowens, Don Nelson, and you have Jack Sigma with the Sonics, Jack Sigma, and Spencer Haywood with the Sonics, 79. There's a lot of good players. Noticeable players in the 70s. It wasn't popular, but it was noticeable players in the NBA. And the ABA had some great players too. But that merger in 76 with Dr. J, you already know. The 80s. Y'all know who? Bird and Magic. That was a league. They were the faces of the league. The face of the league argument started in the 80s. There was really no face. I think Wilt was the face for the 60s and the 70s because of the stat pad. And then, yes, I forgot about Kareem. Excuse me. Kareem came in the NBA, I think, was it in the 60s, I believe, in the 70s and all that stuff. Yeah. I believe he played, I think it was the 60s and 70s. I think Kareem was good. He played with the Bucks and won a championship with Oscar Robertson. I forgot about him. He's another one. In the 70s. He ain't one of my favorite players, but I give him the 70s when he's known as Lou Alcindor. And then the 80s, he was like 5 and 10 range. But back then he was top 5. Even though he won that championship, he was epic with Milwaukee. So it was Chamberlain, him, Willis Reed, Dave Cowens, Don Nelson, Rick Barry, Spencer Haywood, and the Jack Sigmund boys with the Sonics and Wes Unseld. Yeah, you had Jerry Sloan and them boys and the Bulls. It's several players that was good. Expansion teams helped in the 60s, but the 70s was broader. And then you got the ABA merger with Dr. J, and then you got Bill Walton, of course, and all them boys. Now the 80s, Bird and Magic was the standard. Everybody else, you got Sidney Moncrief, you got Kiki Vandeweghe, you got Orlando Blackman, you got a lot of guys. You had who else you had? You had Kareem, of course, formerly known as Lou Alcindor, and then you have a lot of guys, Robert Parrish, like Kevin McHale. Yeah, you had Isaiah Thomas, of course, the Pistons, Bad Boy Pistons. When they had Dennis Rodman, they became the Bad Boys. Prior to that, they wasn't. They were just Detroit Pistons. And you had Bill Laimbeer. You got a lot of good players. You had Michael Jordan just got drafted in '84. He kind of, a lot of people say he didn't save the league. Technically, when it comes to marketing, everybody's gonna say Magic and Bird saved the league. I don't buy that. I just say they saved the interest. I'll say it like that. Did they save the interest of the NBA? Yes, but they did not save the league. No, it was a combination of a lot of things. I think every player saved the NBA. It was a combination of Bird and Magic and the other players, and Michael Jordan was the biggest draw. I'm sorry, even though he wasn't winning championships, he was the biggest draw in the '80s, and they wear his damn shoes. I'm sorry, and they still talk about him to this day. We're gonna get into the '90s in a minute. But we're gonna say Jordan was drafted. Yeah, you had Barkley. That was the future of the '90s, by the way. Then you had Len Bias was supposed to be a star. Rest in peace to him. Rest in power. Rest in peace to him. Most high Yah. But it's a shame that he went out with the cocaine and the party. I had to throw that in there. And you had Reggie Lewis. They played for the Celtics. Celtics still scarred by that to this day. He would have been something. He collapsed on the floor. Y'all know what happened to Reggie Lewis. He's out of there. It's a damn shame. It's a damn shame what happened to Reggie. I always liked him. I'm not a Celtics guy, but I liked the way he played. He was a hell of a player. It's a shame that he went out the way. I saw a documentary about that YouTube years ago about his death, and I remember seeing that game too. How he collapsed. That's fucked up. By the way. Then yeah, I said Magic, and okay, you got James Worthy. Who else you got? You got a lot of people. Brad Daugherty. You had a lot of good players in the '80s. They were noticeable. Oh, you had Clyde Drexler. You had Hakeem Olajuwon. They used to call him Akeem in college. They didn't call him Hakeem. They said Akeem Olajuwon, but then they call him Hakeem. That's his real name. And Olajuwon, he was drafted around that time in '84. It's a lot of good players. Patrick Ewing was drafted. It's a lot of players was drafted. Yeah, you had Scottie Pippen, his overrated ass. It's a lot of players like that. Dennis Rodman, already a Hall of Famer. He's with the Pistons. Bad boy, it was him, and combination with Jordan and things like that. So the '80s was excellent. Dr. J's super team, 1983, officially the super team that dominated that year, but it couldn't dominate the rest of the way because Bird and Magic was in the way. So basically, what I'm saying is why you have that. Well, the reason being Bird and Magic was competitive. It was their league. Yes, Dr. J was the pass in the '70s in the ABA and a merger. That was his league with Walton, Dave Cowens, and this is when Will Chamberlain was no more. That was early '70s, but during the '70s, you already know it was Jabbar, Dr. J, Bill Walton, several other players, and that was good, like from the Bulls and Wes Unseld. That was their league, and it was a combination of Spencer Hayward. That was their league. And then when Magic and Bird came, they changed it. They enhanced what modern television people saw. The '80s basketball was a great era. It was a great era. It's actually one of the top 5 eras. I have it in the top 5. It's on the best. I have it on the 4th spot. Just to be honest with you, the '80s in top 5 is the 4th spot. I'm sorry, it still is. That was the greatest era too. It's in the 4th spot behind the '60s. The '60s is in the top 3 because you saw great talent like Chamberlain. You learned about black players came in the league. That was the standard in the NBA of modern NBA. Prior to that, you had white players and a few black players in the '50s. So '40s and '50s, a lot of people don't mention that. That's in the 5 and the 10 argument. But if you want to talk about the top 3, you already know it's the '90s. I got the 2000s because they play like the '90s. That's like the second greatest era of basketball. And then you have the '60s. I have that as my top 3 because of the essence of the styles you see today. The '80s is in top 5. Why? Because yeah, the '80s is a little overrated because you had a lot of guys barely play defense. They play defense, but they didn't have that much defense. It was a lot of fist fighting. The '80s was something else. But the '80s was contained, media and money control, but the 80s became something. So the 80s is in the fourth spot. In the fifth spot, I gotta say, the 70s wasn't the greatest era. I do like the ABA, but it's in the fifth spot well. Because the 70s, you saw actual basketball. The 70s and the ABA merger and before the merger was a great era. A lot of talent. A lot of people did that. That was in the 70s, by the way. I was in the 20th century. So, yeah, the 80s, we just talked about the 80s, but the 80s is in the top five league all time because you had great players that came out of that. Out of the 80s was drafted, and the 80s became something. Now, the 90s, of course, you already know it's Michael Jordan. He ruled the 90s. Like I said, those championships, he ruled it. Isaiah couldn't, unfortunately. He won 1990. But Michael Jordan, they took over that era. And a lot of people still hate Michael Jordan to this day because he is most talked about since the 90s and now. Because his shoes, his marketing brand, the 90s was the pinnacle of basketball. It peaked. Actually, the NBA peaked in the 2000s. A lot of people say it peaked in the 90s. Actually, peaked in the 2000s because 2009, that's when it was great. After that, it went. The 90s is when it's peaked, they say. But really, it peaked in the 2000s because it's like the 90s. It was everybody wasn't on this technological what you see right now. See, 2000, you barely had cell phones in America. You did, but not to the level of the internet what it is now. See, I grew up in the 90s. I saw that. In the 2000s, you didn't really have much. So the 90s, you had a lot of players. You had Jordan, you had Ewing, Barkley. Who else you had? Yes, you had Alonzo Mourning and Shaquille O'Neal. You had Kobe Bryant on the tail end of the 90s. Ray Allen, of course. Who else you had in the 90s? You had of course, you had Dennis Rodman that used to play for the Pistons and the Spurs, of course. Hakeem Olajuwon, you had Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Karl Malone, Sean Kemp. Sean Kemp and Gary Payton were good players. Did they? I'm trying to figure out. Did they make the All Star team? I'm trying to figure out. I'm gonna look up Sean Kemp for a minute because this is I gotta confirm. Was he an All Star? I know Gary Payton was an All Star. Gary Payton was an All Star because I'm trying to figure out was he an All Star because this is because Sean Kemp was a good player with the Sonics. He's from Elkhart, Indiana, by the way. Yeah, he went to Concord High School, but he was from Elkhart, Indiana, by the way. Yeah, he played the Trailblazers and the Magic. Yeah, he's a six-time NBA All-Star. He's a six-time NBA All-Star from 19 I'll say from 1993. He's a six-time NBA All-Star. He was a 1993 to 1998. He's a six-time NBA All-Star. He was an All-Star. It was him, Gary Payton, I mentioned. Who else was there? And then you had Mutombo was an All-Star. Who else was an All-Star? Yeah, you had Shaquille O'Neal. You had a lot of players. The 90s was loaded with talent. Role players was balanced too. They knew their place. Three-time All NBA team. I mean, second team. All NBA second team from 94 to 96. He's a McDonald's All American from the high school. He's all accomplishment. That's his career highlights. He was a 15.3 premier game. Rebounds is 8 points. 8.3 rebounds per game. Blocks 1.2. He's an athletic finisher, by the way. Yeah, so Sean Kemp was an NBA All Star six times. I had to look him up because he's one of my favorite athletic finishers of all time. This dude can finish around the rim and it's crazy. Them Sonics is something else. Even though Seattle is trying to disrupt the All Star game, this coming up on the 11th on Tuesday, because the homeless, I found that from Black and White Sports, and man, it's crazy. And Seattle's done. Seattle ain't what it used to be. There's gonna be some protesting on the 11th. Just be on the lookout for that. It's gonna be a wild day. But anyways, yeah, the reason I mention these eras in the NBA is because people forget I've been watching a lot of sports commentary podcasts with Tural and Dreamer Sports Pro. They come out with these reports of Wembanyama and things like that. It's basically people forget about years. They had these narrative about the GOAT narrative. Like, well, Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time since the decade. Even though he's the greatest, he's a guy that accomplished a lot in the 90s. I think that era alone makes him the greatest. A lot of people ain't gonna go to Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain. Were they the greatest? They can be. You can call them goats too, but in reality, Jordan's a goat because he did something that none of those players did. He played teams in 82 season games, and that's why people had this bias with Jordan. And the media still loves Michael Jordan. They try to pretend they love LeBron James. No, they love Michael Jordan. They mad because he's talked about it's those damn shoes and him. They got to stop hating on Jordan. Just let that go. Y'all, you Jordan haters out there don't know shit about nothing. Y'all just mad because Jordan did something. He stranglehold the league for years. And if you wonder why teams is winning championships left and right, blame that on Michael Jordan in the 90s. I'll try to tell y'all. The two teams he never faced was the Spurs and the Rockets. They would have gave a run for his one. I would have picked the Spurs and Rockets to beat Jordan. Jordan was beatable. A lot of people say Jordan was not beatable. Yes, he was. And one team that took him 6 games was the Utah Jazz. And I said Carmelo and Stockton. Come on now. Like, Jordan played with talent. For Christ's sakes, he had Reggie Miller. He played against him in the Eastern Conference and all those teams, the Knicks and Miami Heat, and he played a lot of teams. Charlotte Hornets in the 90s, the late 90s, and all that shit. He played against Shaq in 95. Beat him in 96 after the Magic had a Horace Grant, and he felt betrayed by Horace Grant. That's how he got Dennis Rodman. That's why they had the greatest team in the 90s since that they won that the 72 games. That was the 96. That was the greatest team of all time. It's the 96 Bulls team. After that, they just maintained that for the last 2 years. And after that, they just couldn't win in 99. And he wanted a 7th championship. I've heard him say he wanted a 7th championship, but it wasn't enough. But he shouldn't have missed those 2 years. It's Michael Jordan for you. But then see, 99, David Robinson won his first championship. But then you already know the 2000s. You already know Shaq, Kobe, Duncan. Of course, you got Ray Allen. Of course, you had Iverson. I forgot about Allen Iverson. Excuse me. Allen Iverson was good in the 90s too. He was the upstart. He didn't have the first pivotal player until the 2000s. 2000, yeah, Iverson did. But when Iverson came to the league, he came in the 90s. He came in 96. A lot of people forget Allen Iverson had that bowl cut. He's from Bethel High School in Virginia, but he went to Georgetown. But they forget he used to play Philadelphia with no braids and no cornrows. Spree had it. The tattoos came from Dennis Rodman first. I don't know why people try to ignore that. He had it first. Iverson's tattoos was a part like Dennis, and then he had eventually get the sleeve and all that other stuff, and the neck tattoos. That was that hip hop. That was that urban hip hop and the battle rap type style hip hop, street ball and one shit. Iverson took that and enhanced his career. That's why he's trendsetting the culture. Every player's doing that. They're trying to look like and one players. That's why a lot of people don't like the 2000s as much because Allen Iverson, he did change the game. Yes, he's very influential. He's probably number 2 on the list as influential. I have Iverson on the list. Kobe Bryant will be number 3, but who really transcended the game and was influential and controversial? If I have a list, I have Dennis Rodman, then I have Allen Iverson, then I have Kobe Bryant because Kobe Bryant said some controversial things too. But you can reverse it. Some people say they lower that. No, that's my list. I say they impact the way players are today. Michael Jordan, is he on that list? Absolutely. I put him top 5. I can't put him now. If you want to say business, who transcends the business of basketball, yeah, he's number 1 on the list. But you want to talk about culture, it's a different argument. You can't put MJ. He's top 5, yeah, culture wise because his shoes. But outside that, you got to give it to Allen Iverson, Kobe, or Dennis Rodman because they actually make the players what they are today. Okay. That's basically what I'm saying. So when you have these things like that, you understand what type of NBA it is because the 2000s was great. You had a lot of talent. Yes, you had who else you had in the 2000s? Shit, LeBron wasn't new. He was young. He was drafted in '03. Okay, Dwayne Wade, that was later. What you had, but the 2000s in the beginning, it was Duncan, Garnett. Kevin Garnett was good in the late '90s, but in the 2000s, that was it. It was him, Pierce, Ray Allen. Who else you had? You had Shaq, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe. What she had? Reggie Miller was on the decline. He was done. Allen Iverson. What she had in the 2000s? It's so many good players in the early 2000s. 'Cause I remember it like it was yesterday. Who else you got? Wasn't it, but it was. It was. I said Duncan, and who else you had? Oh, I'm forgetting one player. Oh, I forgot. Forgetting one player in the 2000s. Chris Webber was okay, but I wouldn't count him. He didn't win no championship, even though he was a good player. Who else was in it too? Vince Carter, I would count him. He was an all-star, but he didn't do much for me. He didn't win a championship. It's a lot of good players. I mean, yeah, I can count those. Those players are reasonable. Tracy McGrady was okay, but he wasn't on that level. Oh man, it's a lot of good players. Yeah, yeah, Dwight Howard, he's on the tail end. He was the beginning. He was 04. But you talking about like from '09 and to early 2000s, that was your players. That's the talent pool you had. But now 2010s, yes, LeBron dominated the teams. There wasn't that many players. I mean, Dirk. Yeah, excuse me, Dirk. Now from the 2000s, you had Dirk, Dwayne Wade, Duncan, Shaq, Kobe Bryant. Yeah, you had Pau Gasol. You had um, Garnett, Pierce, Ray Allen. It's a lot of players that were faces. The 2000s was up for grabs. Someone was the face. LeBron was going to be the face of the league after he went to the finals in '07 and got swept. But that next era was his. So he took over. Kobe had the league in the 2000s. I'll say it like this. Kobe was the face, technically. A lot of people just didn't like Kobe, but Kobe, and then there was Iverson. It was a combination of guys. Yeah, and Dirk and all of them. But it is what it is. So with that, that's it. And after that, it went downhill. It became LeBron show ever since. But the 2020s, you already got Jokic. Just won a championship this year, and the Nuggets is going to be. This is their era now. They done took over since they won the championship. A lot of people say the Lakers going to beat the Nuggets. No, not with that bad coaching. They could have put Chris Maxey in the finals. Chris Maxey is a good defensive player. I blame Darvin Ham not playing him and not playing Tristan Thompson. This is why the Lakers will always be trash. LeBron's not winning another chip. The media needs to stop. He got swept. It was close games, but he got swept. He gonna get swept again. So it is what it is. But mainly, you have these teams come around and see what's going on. But basically, you have those teams to make sure you know, the Western Conference Finals, I saw this year was okay. It wasn't nothing flashy, but Denver deserved that championship. They played hard, and as long as they have Jamal Murray and then Mike Malone, they're good. But it's gonna be interesting next year. But that's the NBA. But yeah, Wembanyama is new. They try to say he's the face now, but we'll see. We gotta see in the years, is he gonna be that guy? I say he will be, but give my Spurs some time. Pop is still around, still coaching, legendary, and then boom. But that Britney Spears, man, she's a whore. Okay, she's a drunken drug addict whore. Uh, F her and her fan base. He don't have to apologize for shit. That man is a star. The NBA protect their security. He ain't apologizing for shit. She'll walk away. He'll pay her to shut the hell up. It is what it is. And that's what you got. And that's what you got, what you're seeing right now. So, anyways, that's it. Sunday Dailies, the 16th edition. Of course, I'll see y'all this coming Thursday on Thursday Thrills. Of course, it's straight Thursday. I ain't dropping no recording Wednesday. We'll see. I may drop something for Wednesday. I may drop something. And it may be some political content, context. I may do something. I may do something Wednesday, but it's straight Thursdays for live streams for this whole summer. And then the fall, I'll bring back the independent thinking series. That comes in the fall. But I may do something with that next year for a live stream. So with that, until next time, shalom to the people of Israel for the truth, to the knowledge, pray to the east. According to Mosiah, shalom to you. Shalom. Until next time, and I'm out.